when we've talked before, you were never very sure about writing a book, were you?
No. I had to be. I think I've been asked for the last 10 years to write a book, and when I sold Jo Malone, everyone wanted me to write a book then because, you've built this business and then sold it to a big corporation. And then after I survived cancer, that was the time to write the book. And I never felt as though I wanted to. I never felt it was the right time, and I wasn't prepared for the emotional baggage that you unpack when you write a book. Because when you unpack your memories, they don't come out in order. So you'll flick something, and then 7 days later, the whole memory will come back to me. And there were times in my childhood that were really painful and really, really tough. So I still remember, the chapter of fighting cancer. I remember that vividly. But your childhood, when I went all the way back, and I think I wasn't prepared to do that. But now, and when I left Jo Malone, I felt that I'd come from a really great height, and I was standing in a valley. And I didn't know who I was anymore, and I'd look up and think, well, that's who I was, but who am I now? And I knew I couldn't write a book standing in the valley. I had to be standing back on the mountainside. So when I got that telephone call from the World Retail Congress nearly 2 years ago saying, you've been honoured and we'd like to honour you, it was like, but I've only got one shop, but you don't realise I'm not part of that big business anymore. And they said, yes, we know, it's to do with you. And when I heard that, it was like, I'm ready to write my book now.
You're back up on the,
I'm back up
on the mountain.
I'm climbing there, but I felt, then when I received the award this year and I was standing there in front of everybody, I realised that I'm not on the top of the mountain, but I've certainly climbed up high enough to write the story. And I'm really glad I did, really glad.
There's a scene in the book where you're talking about, because money was always tight, wasn't it, in your family? And there's a really moving scene when I think I might be making this up, are you looking in the bathroom mirror and I think you were about 10 years old and you were like, okay, I don't want my grown-up life to be like this.
I was in my bedroom.
In your bedroom.
I was in my bedroom and I was sitting, and my dad had, built it, so we had 2 bedrooms in our house, and the front bedroom was big enough, and my sister and I squabbled. So he'd put a partition between the bedrooms so we could have half each. And I had one window, and I was looking out of the window, and I'd scraped the ice. It was winter. I'd scraped the ice off with my finger. And I remember feeling, just the weight of the world on my shoulders. And I just thought, I don't want to live my life like this forever. I want to be free, and I want to be able to be a child, because I knew that I was an adult from a very, very young age. I knew that. And I accepted that responsibility.
When your mum went back to work, she was a manicurist for Revlon.
Yeah.
Lips and Tips, is that right?
She did. She was. I don't know whether she would do lips, but I suppose she did makeup. But she was a great manicurist. That was.
And then she went to work for an amazing woman called Madame Lubarti, which is really where.
Yeah.
That's where your passion.
Yeah.
Was. What's the word? Ignited. Yes, ignited is the word I was looking for.
It was. Actually, this room is very like that laboratory. And I think I've gone all the way through my life trying to recreate that laboratory in that room. She was the most incredible. If she was in a movie, Helen Mirren would play her. She was sort of regal. She was very beautiful, blonde hair. And she was in her late 70s when I met her. And the love of the cosmetic industry, what she taught me, what she imparted to me. And she was one of my first best friends. I didn't really have lots of friends as a little girl, but she was one of my best friends, and I'd go off to have tea with her and sit in the laboratory all day long, because my mum used to get there at sort of 8:30, 9 in the morning for the first client, and I'd still be there at 6 in the evening. So I would spend all day with her. And I loved my grandmother, but Madame Lubarti was a pretty amazing human being. She was very funny, very amusing, and so creative.
So you left school at 15?
I was 15. I never did any mocks. I never did any GCSEs. I never took any exams. And I can't remember the last day of school. And even writing this book, I thought it'll come back to me. It didn't. And whether
wiped
for whatever reason, I can't remember ever. You know, like most people remember, don't they, their last moments at school. I don't. I can remember. It was well before Christmas, and so I must have been 15. Yeah,
it must have been beginning of.
Well, I didn't do any mocks
year.
or anything at all. So, yeah, just before I was 15 and 15, I never went back to school, and no one ever came and found out why.
Great.
And I sometimes it's so weird. A few years ago, I went through huge anxiety issues. And I would have this continuing dream that I had to go back to school and finish schooling and get my exams.
Horrible.
And it was really panicked me because it kept sending me back. And of course, it was where I felt insecure. And it was probably the most insecure time of my life. And that's where my subconscious was taking me back to.
That's really interesting. And was that the same time as you were down the bottom of the mountain?
Yes. Yeah. I felt very isolated, very alone, and anxiety completely took over my life. I mean, I had to go and get help. It was pretty awful. Yeah.
Which it sounds amazing looking at you now and everything you've achieved.
Creative people often have. I mean, I went to an amazing woman called Dr. Anna Albright. It's actually the first time I've ever spoken about this, and I'm not frightened. You know, when it happens to you, you often feel very scared of admitting that, and it's not until you come through that and you admit it that you realise it doesn't have the hold over you that it did. But I went through it. It was a really awful time. I doubted myself, and it was because I didn't know who I was anymore, and I had no control. And suddenly there I was, Jo Malone, just standing in this valley and thinking, what am I going to do? I wanted to get up every day and either create fragrance or make a face. It's what I'd done. You know, when now you've read that, you understand much more probably of the person that I am. The reason I came back was not to build another business or because I'm a career woman. It's because I truly loved, and I'd done it from the age of 8 years old, and it was my best friend. And suddenly my best friend wasn't there, and I wasn't the person that I had been. So, yeah, that's probably why anxiety knocked on my door and gave me a good old shake-up. But even that I wouldn't let take away from who I was. I found a way back. I found my raw.
You're raw. And it's jumping around a little bit, but we're in this period of time. How did it feel to lose your name?
I didn't feel I'd lost my name. And if we put it in perspective, I just fought cancer.
Yes,
I thought I was going to lose my life. So, you know, when you face your own mortality, and all I wanted to do was survive for my son and my husband. That was all that I cared about during that time. So I'd come through a year of chemotherapy every 5 days. So I'd gone through surgery after surgery and diagnosis after diagnosis, and just when I thought I was beating it, you've got to do chemo all over again. You know, that moment in the book is just, and that is how it was. So I'd come through that. I didn't feel, and I was incredibly grateful to the Lauder family, because without Evelyn Lauder, I wouldn't be here right now.
Amazing woman.
Incredible. I, you know, along with a lot of other people in this world, but I would not be here right now, right this minute. So I'd come through all of that, and then I went back into the business. I was standing in Madison Avenue, and I just didn't belong there. I can't explain why. Nobody did anything mean to me. It wasn't anything to do with that. And everyone tried to talk me around, and you know, I was determined. I thought the cancer was going to come back. So losing my name was the last thing you think of. It's like, I want my life back, and all I could care about was seeing my son go to school for the first day, then my son get married. You know, and any woman that goes through that and has children, that is your first reaction, my family. When I came through that and I realised I wasn't going to die, and I was going to see my son go to school and do all those things, that's when it hit in. And I think I was just hugely naive or hugely smart. I'm not really sure which one. I was probably in between the two of them. I'd done a great deal. My life was comfortable for the rest of my life. But I didn't realise in selling your name or not just my name, but the love of what I did, how much of a person that was. Now, if you asked me to do the same deal today, I would do it so differently. I would still sell to the Lauders. I would still do all those things, but I would do it very differently. But any entrepreneur would say that.
One last question. As well as your family, your book is dedicated to every entrepreneur who every day takes one more step of courage and never gives up the dream. What one advice would you give that entrepreneur who's reading your book? What one bit of advice? Sorry.
Find your roar and let the world listen and hear it. And don't let people tell you can't, or it's not the right time, or there is always 101 excuses why you can't do something. And there's only often one real reason why you should. But I would say build and create because it makes you happy. Because if you're not happy and contented and fulfilled, you know what? Nothing else really makes sense. And if it's really what you want, and there are a lot of days where you want to quit. I know those days, and so do you. But you just never quit on a bad day either. Always quit on a good day. Because the landscape of your life can change so dramatically, so quickly, you end up regretting that decision. But if you make that decision when you can see the whole landscape and you feel content, you're much more likely not to make a mistake.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Jo.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, that was lovely.
Brilliant.